Let's get started by creating our character. So in the scene tree, we're going to create a 2D scene. It's going to create a node 2D in a new scene and switch to the 2D editor, as you can see. Our base character scene will be the parent for both the player and the NPC in our game. We want this character to be able to move and interact with the physics engine in the world, to collide with walls, etc. So we're going to right click on the node 2D and change the type to kinematic body 2D. So you can type the name of the node to find it and select kinematic body 2D. Change the type of our node 2D at first. We're going to rename this one to character. This will be the name of our scene, and we're going to save, Control S, and save it in the characters folder. It's going to give us the name character.tscn, so you can press enter to validate that. To interact with the world, our character will need a collision shape 2D. You can see the warning next to the kinematic body 2D, and that's because we don't have a collision polygon. So let's press Ctrl A to add a new node, and we're going to search for collision shape 2D. Press enter to create it, and we need to add a shape to that node. So select it, go to the inspector on the right, and let's create a new rectangle for our character. So we are a bit zoomed out. So let's zoom on our node. I'm going to center the origin of the world and to click the plus button or Control plus and go to 3.1 to zoom in. Note that you want to create your characters and your individual scenes at the origin of the world, like we are doing here. But if you press F6, well, let's add a sprite to see that. So search for PNG files, or you can search for body.png, and we can use the gray body, although you'll see in the final version of the chapter we've been using the blue body for the character scene. It's not very important. So you can drag and drop sprites on the scene to create a sprite node, and I'm going to reset its transform to 0. So you can unfold the transform section in the inspector and click the reset button to reset it. Then press W to toggle the move tool and click with the shift key pressed to move the sprites only on the horizontal axis. Note in the hierarchy, if you want to see the collision shape in front of the sprite, you can select the sprite and press Ctrl up to move it on up in the hierarchy, or you can drag and drop it in the scene tree. But then the order of display is everything that's at the top of a given node branch will be in the back by default. And so then if the collision shape is below the body, it will display on screen in front of it. Note we're not going to have the body just like that. We're going to add a node for our character's animation. So press Ctrl A, and we're going to use a position 2D node. You could use a node 2D, but position 2D will display a nice cross that will make it easy to spot this position, the pivot point, in the viewport. Press enter. You can see this cross I'm talking about here on screen. And so we're going to call this node pivot. And note that in our style project, I've prepared some animations for us, and we need this node to be called pivot and the body to be called body, but with a capital letter, for the animation to work on the character. Because animations, once you save them as files on your hard drive, they control the nodes based on their exact names, based on the exact node path. So you'll need the pivot and body nodes under the character scene here. We're then going to add a shadow, so you can search for shadow, or you can find it in the characters folder. Select the character node to have the shadow as a child of it. Click and drag it on the scene. So we're going to add it as a sprite once again. Then with the shadow selected, in the inspector, we're going to reset its transform to center it on the origin of the world. And we're going to go to its visibility section under canvas item, and we're going to use the modulate property to lower the opacity of our node. So you can use that to multiply the texture that you have by the alpha channel of the modulate color. It's going to make the shadow a little more transparent. Now this shadow, we want it to be behind the body and the pivot, but sometimes you want the node to still be below the others in the hierarchy in your scene tree. And to do so, you can use the checkbox in the canvas item category, show behind the parent. It's going to render the shadow before the parent and all the child nodes that are around here. And let's also capitalize the name of our node. We'll try to do that all the time in this chapter for consistency's sake. Now, the last thing we are going to do is add some debugging tool to our node. So let's select character again, and we're going to add a label, a node that displays text. So let's create that. We're going to rename it to state label. And in the character folder, you will find a statelabel.gd script that you can drag and drop on it. So this will display some debug information in this little frame here. Let's write some base text. We will uppercase it automatically in the inspector, so with the label selected, right? We're going to center the text in the box, and we'll make sure to move it. So again, W to select the move tool in the toolbar, and click and drag to move the node around. We are also going to make the frame a little bigger. So Q to go back to the select tool, and the select tool allows us to resize an object's bounding box. So let's click and drag on one of the corners of the frame, and you can use Alt to make it symmetrical, to make the scale symmetrical. All right, so with that, we are also going to change the font of the text. To do so, you want to go down to custom fonts on the label node, and we're going to create a new font resource here. So click on the arrow, new dynamic font, and click to expand the custom font here, or you can click and edit here to get a behavior similar to Godot 3.0. We're going to expand the settings. 16 is good. We want to expand the font section, and we need some font data to display characters on the screen. So in the helpers folder, you will find a font file, Source Code Pro Bold here. Click and drag it on the font data to display the font in game. Note that you can select a node and press Shift F to zoom to it, to frame it on the screen, or you can press F anytime to recenter the view on a given node, and Control minus and Control plus in Godot 3.1 to zoom in and out. But with that, we have our base character scene, and in the next video, we're going to create the player from that and start coding the movement.